Hey, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining. So, big news in the car world today, and also within the past week as well, but today specifically there was more big news, and that is that Tim Kuniskis returns to Mopar. He's coming out of retirement to be the CEO of Ram. Now, as you probably know, he was driven out by Carlos Tavares, who is the Belgian CEO of Stellantis, the overlords of many, many brands worldwide, including the former Mopar brands, the FCA brands, Jeep, Dodge, Chrysler, and Ram. Am I forgetting anything? And in any event, he was out as of about a week ago. And I'm so glad, because I haven't had a chance to comment on Tavares being booted yet from Stellantis, so that's the first thing I want to do. And I want to say good riddance. This guy has destroyed the American brands of Stellantis, the Mopar, the former Mopar brands. Well, they're still the Mopar brands. And he didn't even care that he was destroying these brands. So I'm so glad he's out. Now, I like everybody, but I couldn't stand looking at this guy's face. He was so arrogant, and he just destroyed Stellantis, and he didn't even care. Number one, he didn't understand the American market. He was more interested in pushing and ramming down our throats his green European philosophy and agenda, which included phasing out fossil fuels and phasing out internal combustion engines and mandating EVs. Even when he saw that EVs weren't selling, that people didn't want them, but he still wanted to push this. Now, what kind of a guy who's running a company doesn't care what the consumers think and just wants to push an agenda instead of making the company successful and profitable? But again, that wasn't happening. For some reason, the board of directors was allowing Tavares to continue to destroy Stellantis and specifically the Mopar brands in America, but that is done. They have finally realized that for a number of reasons, they can't put up with him any longer. He's not going to be successful, and he had to go out. So a lot of people have been talking about, well, now that Tavares is out, what happens next? What happens with Stellantis? What happens with the Chrysler brands? And we're starting to get the answers to that. First of all, in the past week, others have reported that there were people, the people at Stellantis were in talks with Tim Kuniskis to bring him back. And that was fantastic news, because Kuniskis is a real car guy. And he basically was the guy that brought the Hellcat powered vehicles to market. He loved those muscle cars. He made Dodge and the Mopar brands what they are today, what they are until up until about a couple of years ago. And then, when Stellantis took over the running of North American Mopar brands, that basically was kind of the end of those brands, including and because of the fact that they were getting rid of the V8s. And Tim Kuniskis is a V8 guy. He knows what people want. He knows what we're selling. And Tavares didn't care. And I'm sure there were these great internal battles, which we weren't privy to, between Tim Kuniskis and Tavares and the other board of director members. But in the end, Kuniskis said, that's it. I'm not going to put up with this. I'm not going to stick around and watch the demise of my great brands that I have helped build. So he retired. And then, again, there have been a number of things that have happened. And, well, this is December now. What happened last month? There was an election. And again, I'm not saying that I'm some great seer. Many people said this, and it was kind of quite evident to anyone who looks at the political world. There was going to be a difference if there was a change in administration, because the Biden administration, and by the way, I'm not making any political statements, I'm just making some political facts, and that is elections have consequences, and there was an election. The Biden administration was still pushing EVs, they were still phasing out fossil fuels, and they were doing so on a number of fronts, which basically were making fossil fuels expensive. It was shutting down exporting natural gas. It was shutting down pipelines here within the United States. It was shutting down drilling and so forth. Whereas the Trump administration said, if we get in, we're going to drill, baby, drill. We're going to get rid of the EV mandates. We're going to give the consumers what they want. And that's going to be a big difference. They were also some of the other things that the Trump administration said they were going to do and are going to do is make some changes regarding EPA regulations, the onerous EPA regulations, and the CAFE standards. The CAFE standards were a de facto EV mandate because they were making the CAFE standards. By the way, for those who may not be familiar, CAFE stands for Corporate Average Fuel Economy. And the Environmental Protection Agency dictated that the car companies must meet certain corporate average fuel economies for all the cars they produce. And they were making those the average corporate average fuel economy so high that normal cars couldn't possibly meet those standards. So you would have to, by default, sell a lot of EVs to offset the gas-powered cars they were selling. So in any event, that's going to go away. Also, in addition to that, there was a Supreme Court ruling a while back, not that long ago, within the past few months, which basically was regarded the Chevron decision. So you can look that up. But in the past, if you didn't agree with some of the regulations, not the legislation and the laws that Congress and the Senate put in place and were signed by the president, but the regulations that were put in place by bureaucrats, if you disagreed, you couldn't really challenge them in court. You had to challenge the agency which made the regulations. So that was a losing battle always. But that was pretty much unconstitutional. That's what the Supreme Court said. So that is also going to affect these onerous government regulations that were put in place by agencies. So again, bottom line, with all this, I kind of got off track, but back to where we're at now, because of the elections and because of the change in the administration and the change in regulations and the change in the agenda by the new administration, this is all great news for the car companies here in America. It's great news for the car buying public here in America. It led to, I'm sure, the decision to oust Carlos Tavares because he was pushing his agenda, and facts are facts. Now with an administration going in a different direction and Tavares not wanting to do that, the board of directors said, look, we're losing money. Our companies are going out of business. Ram is down 20%, almost 20%. The, Dodge is down almost 20%, and they were continuing to go down. The getting rid of the V8s was a horrible decision by Tavares, and the EVs are not selling. There's no interest in the new EVs at Chrysler. Also, the inline 3-liter twin-turboed Hurricane engine, which they're dropping in Jeep vehicles, Ram vehicles, and so forth in lieu of the V8s, are failing miserably. So getting Kuniskis back in place is brilliant. He's going to be pushing cars and vehicles that we want to buy. You will see V8s going back into the Ram vehicles, which he will now be CEO of Ram, as I mentioned. But even if this is only the beginning for Kuniskis as far as running the other Chrysler brands, it certainly is only the beginning of his influence. So even if he sticks with Ram, those V8s are going to also be proliferating back into other Mopar vehicles. And thankfully, a decision made in the past couple of years to continue to manufacture the V8s into 2025, the Hemi engines, allowed those lines not to be shut down, the production lines, so it will be easy to just keep those going. The Durango was extended into 2025, as you all may know, so you can still get a Durango with a Hemi V8 and a Hellcat motor. So again, we have surely not seen the end of Hellcats. And don't call me Shirley. Surely not seen the end of Hellcats in production vehicles for Chrysler. Great news. Great that Kuniskis is back. I think this is the beginning of great things, and we will be around to see what happens. If you haven't already done so, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell. Those things help a lot. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next time. Take care.